Hey Primatech peeps, and welcome back to the Primatech Files, a Southgate Media Group podcast dedicated to all things Heroes Prime and Heroes Reborn related. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know one of the main reasons I got into Heroes was because of RPGing, and I'm carrying on down the rabbit hole into Tumblr, which is very foreign to me, but it's a good thing I've got a friend of the show, Cogs, and her fellow admin, Alex, from Brave New World to talk me through it. Welcome, Cogs.
Hey, glad to be back.
And Alex.
Hey guys.
Alex, this is your first time on the podcast, so I am going to ask you the normal questions about being a Heroes fan. So, Alex, when did you first get into Heroes?
When it first aired. My family and I actually watched it together every week when it came on.
Do you have a particular moment that you kind of knew that you were invested in the show?
Oh God. I don't know. I guess probably the episode Homecoming.
Is there any particular reason for that?
It really sparked my interest in all the ways that everyone connects to each other.
It was like the first kind of meeting of all the people, wasn't it? From like these different storylines, yeah.
Yeah, it's the first time we find out that Peter and Claire meet, and that Hero was supposed to be there, and Siler's over there trying to kill Claire, and then Noah finds out about Claire sneaking out.
Do you have a favourite character?
Siler.
Straight away. Look, no, are we of the belief that Siler is the father?
Oh, yeah.
And again, straight away. That's fine. How about a favourite volume? Do you have a favourite volume of Heroes?
Probably the first one, Genesis, or Fugitives.
Yes, I am of the vein that I much prefer Fugitives, because I think as good as the first season is, I've got a lot of characters that I don't really like in it, whereas in Fugitives, I kind of can watch it the whole way through and not really be like, oh, Jessica, stop it, or something like that, or like, damn it, Jessica and DL have better chemistry. But yeah, that's just me. Okay, so we'll get on to Heroes Reborn, Alex. What did you think about Heroes Reborn?
Like everyone else, there are some things I liked and some things I didn't. I'm still very upset about the whole idea that Claire is supposedly dead. I say supposedly because now that we find out that Nashville's been canceled, I'm really rooting for like a season 2 with Hayden coming back as Claire.
Yeah.
And like, bitch, guess what? I'm not dead.
Or like what I've always said was I think season 2 for Reborn could be that 5 years in between, and we can meet Claire, we can have Claire's story, and we can have HRG back, and then we can also kind of meet the dads, like How I Met Your Father, essentially, or at least kind of get to know this dad and why whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Really
great if it could be like a combination of a flashback to find out what happened in those 5 years and to kind of wrap up the cliffhanger they left Heroes Reborn at.
Exactly. Like, that's what they do with How to Get Away with Murder. They have, like, half of the series, I think it's called In Media Res, and then they have, like, the story going along with it. And that would work perfectly for Heroes, because that's essentially what they did in Genesis.
Okay. So, anyway, let's get off Heroes Reborn, because we're here to talk about RPGing and Brave New World, which is your RPG. So, can you explain to the audience Brave New World and, you know, how it got started, when it got started, and the initial idea behind it?
I can totally answer that one. I started it off with a friend named Caitlin about 3 years ago. We wanted to do something that was a little bit different than what the other Heroes RPG was at the time. And so we came up with the plot that there was going to be everything that started after Claire jumped was going to be good, you know, fine and dandy, just like Heroes Reborn before all the shit happened. So we had a school created, like the Petrellis created a school, and all of these specials, whether they're adults or kids, can go here and learn about their abilities. But there's also a flip side. Obviously, with every good guy, there's a bad guy. So every volume, we have a bad guy. The first one we had was this guy named Flash, and he pretty much was
like all things evil and like super into like evil supremacy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then this past volume, we had this guy named Godfrey who wanted to change the course of history. So he was trying to find out ways to go back in time and change what happened with his lover.
Oh.
Yeah. And I mean, whose lover was kind of a secret, so I'll keep it all hush-hush. But it would have seriously altered the entire course of Heroes altogether.
Okay.
But he died, And now who we currently have is this Continuance Consolidated, and they're also a little bit Evo Supremacy.
Okay.
They have some ulterior motives.
We haven't exactly named it yet. What we're working into is that Continuance they're doing the formula, all right? And they are wanting to elevate all of their human employees to Evo status.
Yeah, but I can't remember the name of the project that Trevor Mason was involved in.
Gemini.
Gemini,
yes.
There we go. Okay.
So they're trying to recreate that formula and the one that they used in season 3.
Okay. You're mixing the canons.
Yep.
I come from pro boards kind of RPGing and that kind of play by post where you just post on a thread. How do you guys RPG on Tumblr?
There's so many resources out there, and we are totally up for just talking with you one-on-one or linking you to the resources. But if you're familiar with Tumblr as a platform, you know how you have all the reblogs? That's how we work. So most of our threads are one-on-one, so one character and another character, and you just reblog that same thread while cutting the post or whatever you need to do.
Okay.
And that's pretty much how it works. It's not a free for all. I see form RPGs.
How do you guys come up with the kind of story arcs? Do you talk through them together, or do you get user input? Kind of talk us through how you kind of bring volumes together.
A little bit of both. We'll start talking to each other, Cogs and I, about what we think would be a really good plot idea. And then, we usually do a survey halfway through a volume and at the end of the volume to get kind of the input from our members of what they want to see, what they don't, how they like where things are going, and all of that good stuff. And then we use it to kind of help create ideas for what we want to do with our plots later on.
Okay, so it's kind of like a mid-season break. You have a little focus group.
Yeah, and we also have if one of our players comes to us and they're like, "Hey, I have this really good idea, and I want to try doing this," and it affects the overarching plot. We have a process that we go through to make sure that it's okay with everybody else. Hey.
Okay, because of the way that Heroes kind of tells its stories and the fact that there's all these people all over the place and all of them don't seem to have any kind of connection. Do you try and kind of interweave all these stories that are that you come up with and that are suggested and find a way that they can kind of commingle at the end? Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, definitely.
All the time. All the time.
Yeah, sometimes we have characters who are they write backgrounds for these characters, the members, or we do, and then halfway through having them taken up, a few months later, they're like, "Oh, hey, wouldn't it be cool if this person was related to this person, or they had some sort of history 6 months ago?" And bam, magic.
Do you guys use canon characters in your RPG?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. We have pretty much everyone. We even have some minor characters like Abby Collins and
Lyle. You've got Lyle, right?
Yes, we do have
Lyle.
Was that always something that you kind of wanted to start with? Did you always want to have a mixture of canon and original? Because I know kind of when I first started RPGing, I was like, I don't really want any kind of canon characters because it's just sometimes when people pick them up, it's not the best, and you're kind of like, oh, well, can I? No. So I just was straight away to the rest of my admins, we should just do original characters only, but we can do NPC characters and bring them in every now and then to kind of help out. Why did you guys decide to go with a mixture of canon and original?
Well, we figured when Caitlin and I first started the group that it would be a lot easier to kind of implement OCs into the new, the school, the whole aspect of that. Because a lot of the canon characters wouldn't come to these places. Some of them hate each other, like Siler, but then he became a good guy and he was actually a trainer at the school for a little while. So we figured it was just better to have some original characters who hated the school, who wanted to come to the school, and then they can work their way into what the other canon characters are doing.
Okay.
And when we're looking for canon characters, we have this entire application process. And you were worried about people not really understanding the character, we talk to the members before they take up the canons, and we make sure, hey, does this sound agreeable? Do our headcanons mesh? That sort of thing.
Oh, fair enough. So you kind of already explained the kind of main volumes to us. Do you have like titles for them, like how Heroes has Generations and Fugitives and stuff like that?
Yeah. Our first volume, which we actually called Volume 6 since it was a continuation, we titled Brave New World. And then our last one, Dark Games.
With Heroes Reborn coming out, how quick was it for you to start integrating Heroes Reborn? And did it kind of change your kind of story ideas when it came to making the site-wide plots?
Actually, our plot, the idea we had for our current volume, was already going into a sort of Heroes Reborn direction. Like, we had this current plot idea for a year, we just hadn't implemented it yet. So when we found out about Heroes Reborn and we started watching the episodes, we were like, this is perfect. So we easily fit canon characters from Reborn into it. We just changed some of their backstories a little bit.
It kind of happened when I was talking to one of my admins on my old board, and we can see aspects of Heroes Reborn coming into the stories that we were telling, but that was like 2 or 3 years ago. Like, we had like a technological company which was kind of Renatus, and we had other little things going on. It's weird. It's weird how stuff like that kind of happens, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny that all of us probably had this idea that Heroes Reborn was going to go in this direction. I mean, look at Fugitives. It sort of already started.
So why don't you guys kind of talk about what storyline you're doing now, so we can, people can decide if they want to jump in now or not.
So in Volume 7, Dark Games, and we're currently in Volume 8, Most Dangerous Game, Continuance opened up these portals into a different future, which was if you've ever seen the movie Fringe, you know how there's the parallel universe.
Yep.
Our parallel universe links to the Shanti virus universe, where, most of the population is dead, so kind of chaos all the time. And so we have the portals going on, and we have people just coming back and forth, and our new Primatech group, Fortis, is trying to get ahead of it and trying to make sure, okay, no one that's sick comes through, and if they do, we control it. And then we also have a hunters group, which, as it sounds, they are hunting Evos just in cold blood. And they have this fight club mentality, and there's like rewards for killing all of these people. And it's still kind of flying under the radar, but it's starting to surface. And there was a thing that happened in week 3. We function on like a timeline.
Okay.
Instead of real-time RPG, because if it was real-time, nothing would get accomplished ever. So, I believe it was week 3, we brought in, they had the Evo Registration Act in Heroes Reborn, so we brought in the Evolved Human Registration Act, which is pretty much the same thing. And right now it's currently not mandatory, but it's likely to become mandatory by the end of the Volume 8 or the beginning of Volume 9.
Okay.
And that's kind of where we're at. There's just a lot of chaos going on, pretty much.
Organized chaos, I'm sure, though.
Sometimes.
So you guys have obviously started to integrate bits of Heroes Reborn, and some of it like past, because you were talking about how you've got the Gemini formula in, but then you're also starting to just bring in the Registration Act.
Oh, Hero Truther, like Rebel is starting to turn more into like the Hero Truther. I think it's still going to stay labeled as Rebel just for continuity purposes, but that's another thing that's happening. Like Micah's doing his thing, talking to people.
It's become a little bit dark too, because there's this one character who she's been hunted and hurt by some of the hunters. So, but she's connected to Rebel. And she wants to kill these hunters because they're coming after Evos, and she's an Evo, so it's kind of turning a little bit of a dark turn.
I would like to add is that a lot of our canon bios, unless they're like main characters, are canon divergent. All of our Reborn bios are canon divergent. And we're totally willing to talk with someone like, hey, I like this part of the bio, but I would rather do this instead of that. Like, we are totally willing to work with anyone on anything almost.
Okay. So when you talk about that, it's like, say, bringing back Joanne Collins and having a reason for it to kind of happen or whatnot.
Well, actually, we have a Joanne Collins biography.
Okay.
Because a lot of since our RPG is pre-Heroes Reborn, so are all the characters alive.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have Joanne working with the hunters.
Her and Luke never got married because you know how sometimes it's hard to get ships taken. So we're not going to force anybody to do anything like that.
Yeah. That's pretty good. When you finish a volume, do you kind of write up like a synopsis of what happened over the course of the previous volume, or do you just like have a thread count where you just like say this is the thread and this is the way that you have to read the story?
When we originally started the RPG, we had a thread count, but it became too tedious for us admins to keep up with it. So we ended up writing volume summaries. So we have one for volume 6 and volume 7, and they're linked on our page under volumes.
Awesome. I guess, all that's left to do is thank you, Cogs and Alex, for taking the time to speak to us about this. You'll find the website for Brave New World in the show notes. And, obviously, if you want to take part, you can get in touch with these two. And, the best way to kind of get in touch with them is through their Twitters, I guess. You can follow Cogs.
Bennett Twinnet. We also have a RPG Twitter, promo Twitter, that is BNW RPG Promo.
And you can follow Alex on
Intuitive, but with a C instead of an E.
Thank you everyone for listening. Hope you found the podcast entertaining and informative. And until next time, download the podcast, save the world.